As we come on the air today, I see that there are some cameras at the White House. Looks like the East Room. A crowd has gathered there. President Biden is going to announce a new policy on immigration. Right? So he had his executive order that came out just recently that is at least designed to make it look like there's some sort of crackdown on illegal immigration, which I think is far too little, too late. It's filled with loopholes. I think it's really an election year stunt and joke that should be insulting to most people, especially after he spent months telling us he had no more power left. His authority was gone. It was exhausted. Nothing more here. It has to be Congress. And then, wait, never mind. Actually, there are a few things I can do. But the most useful things he can do, tools at his disposal, he refuses to because that might actually make a serious difference and change the incentives in all of this. So there were some people on the left very angry with Joe Biden because anything that looks like enforcement, they're against. And like you would think maybe it would be a good idea for them to just understand with a wink, this really isn't much of anything. But no, the activist class, they are used to pushing around this weak man and the administration underneath him that very much sides with them on all these radical issues. So now, of course, just days later, they have to do something else to appease that group. It's like we see it in the Gaza conflict as well. If he comes out and gives a speech which is strong on Israel and they're going to do something to support Israel, the next day there's some sort of pander to the pro-Hamas people in his coalition. This is what they do. So now you've got the open borders amnesty people who need something, and this is what Biden is doing. Reading from National Review, the announcement earlier today, and then it's being actually fully unrolled and unveiled by the president himself any minute now at the White House. Quote, the Biden administration announced on Tuesday sweeping executive action to provide legal protections to tens of thousands of illegal immigrants who are married to U.S. citizens. The order, touted by the White House as an effort to keep families together, protects spouses of American citizens from deportation and provides them with work permits if they have lived in the country for at least a decade. An estimated 1.1 million illegal immigrants are married to U.S. citizens, and Biden's new program, referred to as Parole in Place, could benefit nearly 500,000 people. Under the program, eligible individuals will have 3 years to apply for permanent citizenship. Right, so there's a citizenship component to this as well. Now, you might say, Guy, are you really against some executive authority or some, using discretion, I think is probably the term that they would use, to not deport people who are married to American citizens? They've been here for a decade plus. They're married to Americans. What's wrong with giving them a bit of a break and not deporting those people? Well, first of all, there's very little chance that any of these folks would get deported, even if they commit certain crimes, by the way. I would argue, similar to the DREAM Act, which would be a codification of DACA, Obama's order, which is executive action. DREAM Act is the congressional version, the legislative version that we don't have yet. But I am open, at least theoretically, to the idea that, okay, let's strongly deprioritize, any sort of enforcement mechanism or deportation of folks who are married to U.S. citizens, and maybe we can expedite the legal process for them. I'd be open to that if it were, first of all, done by Congress, the legislative branch, the job of which is to legislate and make laws. This is instantly undoable. This is the problem with executive action. And I don't know if this is even legal on Biden's part. He doesn't really care about that. This is another election year move by him. Oh, look, it's a form of amnesty to make a certain element of the party happy. That's what he's doing. So the legality of this move, I will leave to others. I think it should be done by Congress. And also, fundamentally, obviously, he's picked, in this case, these spouses. The DREAM Act is people who were brought here illegally, but as children. These are sympathetic groups. I am sympathetic, right? I'm not saying otherwise. However, in an environment where we have 10 million illegal border crossings since Biden took office and nearly 2 million known gotaways, definitely over 2 million when you count the unknown gotaways, anything you do that broadcasts a new amnesty is once again the opposite of a good, healthy incentive for the overall problem. It is a further magnet. When you start rewarding certain groups of people, even if they are small groups, narrowly defined in like discrete circumstances, even if that's the case, the bigger message that goes out to the cartels, the traffickers, the world community writ large, people who might be considering coming here illegally is, hey, Joe Biden, the Americans, just gave amnesty to hundreds of thousands of people who have now been rewarded for being here illegally. That message, even if you think this is tailored just to certain people in a sympathetic situation, other people get that message, slightly a distorted message, or maybe the correct message. If you come here illegally and stay here long enough, you're going to be able to get something like this handed to you down the pike, which does what? It makes it much likelier that more people are going to keep trying to come here illegally because they get the sense, not wrongly, that the people running the country right now are very amenable to their illegal immigration to America. That's the message. And this is another version of it. That's my problem with it. If we had a secure border and we had this thing like mostly under control, operational control, if Congress got involved and passed something like this under different circumstances, I'd probably be a yes. Because, oh, look at these mean-hearted conservatives who want to break up families. These people are married. They say that they believe in marriage, and look these are all the political arguments that they're going to try to make. I am putting this into a different context that is highly relevant to what we've all witnessed for the last 3.5 years. That is the problem. Plus, like the balance of power, the separation of powers, and the fact that increasingly we just have the executive acting like it's a little fiefdom, a kingdom where they just decide things. The role of Congress, the desire of Congress, the will of Congress, like an afterthought. It's like, all right, well, you can sue me, and then it'll go to the courts. And all he wants is to buy himself some goodwill with certain activists. I just wonder, how could the open borders activists be anything other than thrilled with what they've gotten from Joe Biden? 3.5 years, 10 million illegal crossings. Is that not good enough for them? You have to pander even more? By the way, further context, our colleague Bill Malugin, he reported this yesterday. According to multiple federal sources, ICE's non-detained docket has exploded to 7.4 million cases, more than doubling the Trump years. It's on pace to hit 8 million by the end of this year. Each ICE officer now has to manage an average of 7,000 cases each. One officer, 7,000 cases and growing. The non-detained docket means not in ICE detention. Made up of migrants who have crossed the border illegally and have been released into the United States pending immigration cases and future court dates, as well as other categories of illegal immigrants. It does not include nearly 2 million recorded gotaways. So that is almost 8 million on the docket for ICE. It's just completely unsustainable. And now here's the message from President Biden, and looks like the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, is warming up the crowd to celebrate this unilateral amnesty that they're going to roll out and announce. These problems are not going to get better. These problems were caused by this president and his team. And these problems have real-life consequences, not just for our national sovereignty and the rule of law. Once again, unfortunately, I need to share with you public safety concerns surrounding illegal immigration. And I feel like almost every day I have to give the disclaimer that pointing out horrible crimes committed by illegal immigrants does not mean that all immigrants are bad or criminals or disproportionately violent or anything like that. The reason I have to give the caveat seemingly every day is because seemingly every day there's a violent crime committed by an illegal immigrant to tell you about. And every single day I also, when we talk about these terrible stories, Lake and Riley being the most high-profile one recently, but you can add the woman in Maryland, mother of 5, raped and murdered to that list. We talked about it yesterday. Here are 2 more that I'm about to tell you. The other comment on the other side of the ledger is none of these crimes should have happened at all in the United States because the people who committed them should not be here. Because we have rules, at least theoretically, rules and laws about how to come here. When you break those rules and laws, and you're rewarded for that, in some cases over and over again, and then you do something heinous to an American, yes, we have the right to notice and be really upset about it. Because these are crimes that should have never happened by people with no right to be here. So here is the New York Post today. An illegal immigrant from Ecuador, now in custody, after sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl in a secluded part of a big park in Queens, according to sources. This migrant, believed to have entered the country illegally in 2021, was taken into police custody early Tuesday, so earlier today. Now, this is a Biden-era illegal immigration case, or a Biden newcomer, as he might call them, at the White House. Newcomer from 2021. Biden era, just like the Lake and Riley accused killer, just like the accused killer who was finally scooped up in Oklahoma, having committed violent felonies on both coasts after entering this country illegally under Joe Biden. He encountered this young girl, 13-year-old, held her at knife point with a machete-style blade, and did this in broad daylight at a park in Queens. The department, NYPD, offered a $10,000 reward, and that reward was apparently successful because they got him. He's now in custody, but not before traumatizing and brutalizing this girl. Good Samaritans here in New York found the guy, tied him up, and held him till the cops came. So there's another example, the latest in an endless conga line of these incidents. Here's another one out of Denver, Colorado, a sanctuary city, just like New York is a sanctuary city. Listen, there's one detail in this one that, it's a horrible story, horrible. There's one detail that just jumps out at me at least. Listen to cut 19.
A driver of a semi-truck may have been going too fast when he lost control on Highway 285. Law enforcement is familiar with this man, Ignacio Cruz Mendoza. Federal officials say he had been deported or left the U.S. voluntarily 16 times over the last 22 years. It began in 2002 when Cruz Mendoza was arrested in Oregon. 9 News Investigates learned it was a low-level drug trafficking charge. 10 days in jail, 18 months probation. Federal records show some of his immigration history. Cruz Mendoza was deported on September 10, 2004. He re-entered the U.S. without proper authorization 10 days later. Other than the drug trafficking charge, ICE is not aware of any other local criminal charges on his record. In Colorado, State Patrol says he was driving a big rig without a commercial driver's license. The crash killed a 64-year-old man and seriously hurt another person.
So a man is dead. 64-year-old man in Colorado is dead. That was News 9 in Denver, by the way, doing that report. And the suspect is an illegal immigrant with a criminal record who has been deported 16 times. And we're going back decades here, too. Obviously, we've had enforcement border problems for a very long time. It is worse than ever right now. What a joke. You entered the country illegally, so he was deported and or left voluntarily 16 times. That means that he was able to re-enter the country, presumably every time illegally, especially with a criminal record, every single time seemingly that he wanted to. This is crazy. We can't have a country like this. And right now, the split screen, right now at the White House, Joe Biden is about to officially announce a new amnesty proposal, the details of which matter less than the message this sends in the overall context that we've just opened the show with. And trust me, hear me, if this man and his team wins re-election, they have 4 more years with no accountability to voters, this is only the beginning.